All right, everybody, welcome back to Millennial Sales episode 247. This is your host, Tommy Tahoe. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. Excited for this one. I'm talking to my man, Fred Melanson, on this episode. This is, again, this is the podcast where people come to learn how to build a successful sales career in so many different ways. And, I think Fred's really going to help a lot of people in this episode. Fred is the founder and CEO of Bliinx. That's a relationship assistant that helps you manage follow-ups and catches blind spots in your customer relationships. There's a few reasons why I want to have Fred on. One, we got introduced through mutual connection and really hit it off. I loved hearing his story. He's, a relatively new entrepreneur coming straight out of college, starting a company, which I think is just a badass move, regardless of the business, but just having the gusto to do that in the drive. Fred talks about hacking his way to a great network, which also led to investments and customers. We talk about product-led growth, which is hot in the streets right now. So what does that mean for sales? And what does he learn from that experience? We talked about so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Before we get to that, quick shout out to our sponsor, Postal.io. Show some love to Postal. They are the OG sponsors of this show. What do? They essentially help you cut through the noise with customers and prospects and partners by sending very curated, specific, customized gifts to them. Could be from a local florist or the brewery across town. So rather than just automating it and sending something generic, you can send something very specific. So I've sent this to customers, to former podcast guests, to cross-department people that I work with as a thank you. So check them out at Postal.io. We do have some cool stuff that we've got in the works coming later this year for giveaways and things like that. You can also hit me up. Don't forget LinkedIn, Tom Alemo, Twitter, Instagram, Tommy Tahoe. I'm posting every day on all of these platforms. And then Apple, Spotify, YouTube for this podcast is coming out every week. So show some love. Without further ado, let me boogie on over to my conversation with Fred, and we'll get this thing cracking. Let's go. All right, Fred, good morning. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'm doing well. We've had some technical difficulties this morning, but we're rolling through the punches.
Get through it.
Can't get too upset at 7 a.m, or else the rest of the day will just, go to shit. So
there you go.
Well, it's great to be connected with you. I'm excited to hear about a lot of things, what you're building over at Bliinx, your path, product-led growth, a lot of those different topics. I'd love to start with, getting folks a little more, getting them some more knowledge about you and your story. You told me a story when we last chatted about kind of your way of hacking, I guess, networking and your early career while you were in college. So I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me. Yeah, I kind of growth hacked my network through college. I started college in business in McGill in Montreal, and I knew that I didn't want to go in a investment banking job or big consulting firm job. I wanted to start my business. But I figured what I need to start a business are two things mainly: capital and relationships. Capital is pretty obvious, but the main one was I need to make relationships, whether it's for potential clients or users or investors or whatever it is. And college buddies are not going to get me as fast as I can in terms of starting the business. So I thought about it, and I figured a pretty interesting way to growth hack my network. I wasn't the guy that would go to classes that much. I was more I'm gonna hustle on the side. So what I did was I worked full time in a high-end restaurant in the business district in Montreal, because that was where all of the VPs, CEOs, execs would go and eat. So that was a super quick way for me to build really high quality relationships with people. And that's how I raised the first angel round for Bliinx right before I graduated. That's how I got the first clients for Bliinx and iterated on the pain point and the value. So yeah, that's the way that I found to build a network quickly.
Did you mentioned, you weren't interested in an investment banking
type of job, which, usually like a high achiever in college might go down that route, like because you can make pretty good money right off the bat and you just grind for a couple years and really kind of set yourself up from a career.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider any other career path or, 'cause just being an entrepreneur straight out of college is relatively unique. So I'm just curious if you had considered anything else or if you were just all in, like trying to make your own ideas work.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for sure to start something out of college because you don't know anything, right? Like you don't know shit. So it was tough, but I learned through starting the business that it's really the relationship side of business that I'm passionate about, thus sales. So I kind of fell in love into the sales aspect of business while building Bliinx, because at the start I was trying to find a co-founder, which is a lot like selling in some ways. Like I was trying to get early clients and early users. So it's really the relationship side of things that I was interested about. And then I think just being a problem solver and seeing problems with the world and trying to solve it and have the independence to do so. And I figured like I can go to classes and try to learn that way, or I can try to do it myself and learn the other way, and it'll be even faster. Now, looking back, would I have been better just grinding it out in a sales job? Maybe, but chose the startup path, and we'll see where it leads me.
What do you think some of those folks, while you're this college kid hustling around with your idea for a company, like the folks that invested and, some of your early customers, what do you think drew them to you? Because at that stage, your company is just an idea, right? So I imagine it's something
absolutely.
about you as a person that they're investing in. What do you think that might be?
That's a tough question, but I mean, there's so much of the early investment decision that comes into the team and the individuals that are there. I mean, when we started, even now, like we're starting to launch our product. We're still in beta. We're preparing for public launch. Like it's still, our pre-seed was still some kind of an idea. So it has to do with showing like your character as a person to investors or to client, and for them to believe in you and in your vision and in your journey, and just to want to be a part of that. I think that was the main thing that I did early on, and I still do, is really start relationships extremely early and really go for like, ask for advice, like ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money, kind of the way that I was thinking about it, and really starting relationships extremely early, building those relationships with people. And then once it was time to ask for some commitment, just communicating the big vision and for people to be on board. I guess that was it. That's a tough question. In terms of me, I'm just really passionate about sales, relationships, and a hustler. And I've been able to show that like I've had the personality to figure my way through stuff in the past, and yeah, being able to start the relationship early so you can communicate that before you ask for anything in terms of commitment. And I think that's also a lesson in sales in general. That's how I raised the pre-seed round for Bliinx. Like it was really starting the relationship early and communicating my character and my other co-founder's character.
Yeah, absolutely. So what problem are you guys, we're not going to focus the whole thing on Bliinx as a product, but I do want to talk about it at least for a little. Like what exactly are you guys doing there?
Yeah, we're helping customer facing teams engage their prospects and leads based on activity insights rather than one size fits all sequences. So, I mean, we've talked about it when we first met, like when you're in sales, especially as an AE, there's three things you can focus on mainly: is who you're reaching out to, when you're reaching out to them, and with what content are you reaching out to them. And at Bliinx, what we're really focusing on is the when. Like, I think we've been at the end of the marketing automation wave where like sending a lot of emails isn't the competitive advantage anymore. It's not like the person that sends the most emails wins. It's really about personalization and timing and relevancy. And there's some great tools like Lavender that you recently interviewed for the actual content of your email. What Bliinx is trying to do is we'll be your revenue assistant that pings you with when there's engagement insights that we think you should reach out on. So for example, a lead in your CRM just liked and commented on one of your posts. It's a great timing to engage with them. Or if you're a product-led company, like, hey, someone just signed up for a free trial and then stopped using the app for a week, and they're at a company of a certain size, that's a great like timing to reach out to them. So we're really trying to find those insights in your digital relationships to help reps get more replies by increasing the relevancy of their timing of their outreach.
Yeah, I mean,
if that's clear enough. We're still trying to work the positioning there, but if that's clear enough.
Yeah, I mean, you make it super clear with like the who, the what, and the when is really the whole game for prospecting, right? And I think a company like ZoomInfo or Seamless or something like that kind of solves the who problem. These massive contact databases. The what, I don't really know if there's a technology for that. That's kind of like in your sales skill. And then there's the when, that you have no idea. Like, you could send the perfect email, but if they just bought your competitor a week ago, or they just laid off half their people, like it doesn't matter how good your email is, right? And so timing really is everything. And there's just a matter of luck to that at this stage, and trying to gain any competitive advantage that you can. So I love the idea of trying to, kind of hack your way into knowing when it might be a better time to reach out than others.
Yeah, and the problem right now that we see is the only way to try to have some timing in terms of your AE or CSM outreach right now is to use automated tools. And like, people are getting tired of receiving automated LinkedIn messages and automated emails. And you can see when it's automated. I mean, you can improve it the best you can, but let's say, for example, I'm signing up for a web builder tool, and I'm starting to use the blog feature, the landing page feature a lot. Well, if the sales rep receives an insight in Slack to reach out to me with like some blog content or help desk content about the blog, the chances of me replying are way higher than if it's just part of an automated sequence and I receive that email 5 days later. So there's a ton of engagement activity that's happening, whether it's through your sales conversations, so your emails, your calls, etc., through your marketing engagement, or through your product for product-led companies, that sales reps are not really using to switch from like, okay, you've onboarded, or you're a lead in my pipeline, and I use a one-size-fits-all sequence with like 2 days and then 3 days and 5 days, or switching that to being able to really engage when you're ready to listen at scale. That's what we're trying to do. It's a hard problem, but I think it's worth it as people are looking for that human connection more and more in their relationship with sales reps. So yeah, I think it's an interesting problem.
We were talking for a minute about just the sales tech landscape before we started. I'm curious to get your take. ZoomInfo just announced the acquisition of Chorus 2 days ago at this, as of this recording. And my take is that I think there's going to be a lot more consolidation. I hear from customers and people I talk to on the podcast all the time that the sales tech stack is just too wild. A lot of things that don't work together. It's tough to get adoption. I'm curious, with your feet on the ground, what you see in that way.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And there's a lot of players that are popping up in our space, especially with like product-led sales, which is part of what we're focusing on. But I think the fragmentation in silos is a problem that I think ZoomInfo acquiring Chorus is an example of that, of breaking silos and consolidating two tools that are interesting together. But it's something that we see, right? There's companies right now that are trying to bring in product insights into the hands of sales reps, but then there's marketing automation tools with insights for marketing insights for sales reps. There's also tools with conversation insights and email insights, but it's still not into one. So that's yeah, I think that's where the adoption problem comes from. Is sales reps have 50 plus tools to use and 50 plus interfaces to deal with. So what we're trying to do at Bliinx is, hey, we're going to integrate into all of your tools. So it's really into your workflow. And we're not only going to catch like conversation insights worth acting on, but also marketing activities and product insights if you're a product led, or if you have a freemium or free trial.
I'm curious, are you trying to sell to execs like top down, or are you starting to just try to get users? Well, once you launch the product, and if this is too early to even share, you can just tell me to get to the next question. I'm curious. I see some companies like they're trying to go like full B2B, like sales motion, go to the CMO or the CRO, and others are just trying to get as many users at the practitioner level as possible. I'm just curious what your take is on that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it might change obviously as we iterate and test. But one of the things that bothers me about the sales tech space right now is that everything's made for the VP sales, or everything's made for the CRO or the manager. And I think there are some great tools that are using that strategy. But for us, it's really about empowering the sales rep, empowering the AE more specifically, because there's a lot of tools for SDRs, for marketing automation, outreach, sales law, flem list that are great. But in terms of empowering the AE, the conversations that I have most often, it's like, yeah, when the lead enters the first step in my pipeline, it gets super manual. And if I'm building a relationship with a prospect, I can't really use like too much automation, because it sometimes it can hurt the relationship. So I'm trying to fight against like tools that are just made for managers and then pushed on to sales reps. Yeah. So we're trying to build Bliinx. So it's really like, one of our co-founders is a designer. So we're really focusing on UI, UX, focusing on end user value and really empowering the sales rep. Now, one problem with that is we need to integrate with some of your tools. So we're trying to see how we can do that best, because you might need like managerial access for your CRM to plug your CRM into our tool. But yeah, we're really focusing on the rep, empowering the rep, not necessarily selling to execs. What do you think?
Well, yeah,
good idea, bad?
No, if you get all the reps on a team, well, you could do it two ways. Like if you get all the reps on the team and you're trying to make a one kind of like enterprise type of sale, then if all the reps are advocating for it, it's a much easier sell that way, if you do need to sell to a VP of sales. But you could also do it, as an individual thing too, depending on your technology, and just say, hey, each user is X per month, and you sell it kind of like, one off, like a sales navigator might. You could do it either way.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing that we're gonna validate. But right now, I mean, as a pre-seed company, we're really focusing on delivering value to the end user, and then once we have validation there and we have insights, we'll look into like what's the revenue model and the go to market. Yeah.
So let's talk about entrepreneurship for a minute. Like I said, it's a really bold path coming straight out of college, and I think a lot of people that listen to this show are super ambitious, right? They're trying to get better. A lot of them have side hustles or have explored entrepreneurship in the past or want to in the future. I'm one of those people, right? Like I'm interested in entrepreneurship. I'm just curious to hear about your journey of that, and specifically in a time of like you started a business, and like most of this has been during COVID, right? And and like all like you're doing this grinding work, but all like alone in your rooms, probably. Like, can you talk about what that experience has been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Like it's something to think about, but there's a ton of learnings through that journey. I mean, we've started Bliinx before COVID, so we like the first year of the business was before COVID. We did 500 startups, the last cohort in person of 500 startups in San Francisco, and then we graduated. COVID started. We actually had to do demo day remote because of COVID. It was like the March of the year that it started, and then we've been remote. I think it's just COVID has accelerated the sales space in some ways. I think it's made some shifts that are interesting in terms of like, yes, you have to be efficient with your tools remote, and you have to have like productivity tools for working remote. But at the same time, people are looking for that human to human connection, and like the ages of bots and like super automated messages is starting to be over, even if we're all remote. But in terms of entrepreneurship, my goal was just to, like, instead of having flashy logos in my resume, I wanted to show that I've like done something or figured out something. And for me, it was the fastest way to learn. Like, passionate about sales, gonna start a sales tech company. Like whether that works out or not, like it's just great learning that I can apply to whatever I do next. But it's obviously a really tough one. Like, you have to really have resiliency and self-awareness, and also understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think it's a mistake that I did at the start, wanting to work like 14, 16 hours a day. But you realize that like your startup is more than a year. So if you do that, you have to take care of yourself in the progress. One thing that I also focused on early on is, like, I don't know shit. So I'm going to surround myself with as many advisors as I can, as many like mentors. So, I mean, part of engaging with sales communities, asking other startup founders to take meetings, like the first year of Bliinx, every week I would book like minimum 3 or 4 meetings with just people that I wanted to ask and learn from. And it wasn't like trying to sell. It wasn't like, it was just, hey, you have experience, I need some advice. And that helped me just be better, faster. It's an interesting journey, but it's really great. I would recommend it to everyone. Obviously, you need the thick skin.
How did you find those people to connect with? Like, you just hunt them on LinkedIn and DM them, or what was your way of kind of like finding the right people to ask advice to?
Yeah, I mean, one part of it was the growth hacking thing that I did in college. I mean,
yeah.
I was in front of CEOs, VPs, like partners, and real interesting people. And then leveraging those relationships to get intros, showing that you're hungry, that you want to learn, that you're here for the right reason. And in terms of sales, that you're passionate about sales and learning and contributing. I mean, that's always, for me, it was always about framing it as advice and wanting to give rather than take. There's also some LinkedIn DMs that's happened in there. A bit of email, intros, being creative with your intros. Like, hey, I want an intro to an investor. I look at Crunchbase. I see who they've invested. Do I know someone? Then asking in the background. So yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a huge piece of success, no matter what. If you're a founder, if you're a salesperson, as you're trying to grow your career, right? Like, being willing to have like a beginner's mind, like you said, you don't know shit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so know that there's always something that you can learn from other people and from really anyone that you connect with. And it seems like, if I'm picking this apart, like your superpower seems to be in, I guess, in 2 ways: have that beginner's mind, but also, just be able to build relationships and kind of like find the right people to connect with and learn as much as you can from them, and just keep moving forward and forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the basis of it, is build like quality relationships, build meaningful relationships, whether you're trying to sell something as an SDR, an AE, or you're an entrepreneur. Like, going for the long run in terms of your relationship, I think is really undervalued, but it's the base of everything. That's what I'm passionate about in business, is the relationships that we build, like under our jobs or our day jobs, whether it's in sales or marketing or growth or startup. So yeah, that's what I've been focusing on. That's what saved my ass for the last two years, whether it was fundraising or getting clients. Yeah, I think that's the base of it.
So you mentioned kind of playing the long game, like treating this like a marathon, because it is. And I think that's a trap that a lot of us ambitious people fall under, is getting excited about something getting passionate about it, and then it's good to go all in, but maybe going too all in to a place where you're sprinting and it's not a sustainable amount of effort or time or
Yeah.
energy, and
Yeah.
you burn yourself out. And you seem very, kind of methodical about making sure that that doesn't happen. I'm just curious if you have, on those times where maybe you are feeling, a little lower energy, or you're feeling like, shit, man, I'm so far away from the goal, or anything like that. If you think about something, if you do something, if you have any insight on like what someone might tell themselves if they're kind of feeling that way, and just to help them kind of think more legitimately about like the long term and it being a marathon.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's hard to put it in practice though. Like it's
Yeah.
easy to say, but like I'm not perfect at it. Like sometimes I feel bad when I'm not working, or I let stress like take the best of me, or I work, like I still work really, really hard hours. But I think like believing in the mentality and putting it in practice is something else. But in terms of tricks, I mean, it's finding the little things that just make a difference, like walking my dog in the afternoon, like taking a break, like knowing that back-to-back Zoom meetings will like exponentially increase your fatigue as you work throughout the day. Meditating, or taking some time to do sports, like at Bliinx in our Slack, we have like statuses that you can put yourself in like meditating, or doing sports, or like self-care. So those are things that I try to work on. Also, really just talking to yourself in terms of the psychology that like, hey, it's not the 16th hour in your day that's going to make a difference, especially because we lost so much time at the beginning of Bliinx to just try to work hard. But like, okay, we're working hard, but maybe we're not in the right direction.
Yeah.
Like, and spending more time, and there's other aspects of that, like that thought process in terms of spending more time to discovery, to position your product well. Like there's finding a CTO too early and not validating. But in terms of like self-care, it's really like just repeating to yourself that it's not like more work equals more value.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about you? What do you do to nurture yourself and to not go for the marathon, not the sprint?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I've been trying to be better at, because I have burnt myself out before in the past of just like going too hard with sales plus podcast plus blog plus all this other stuff. I think what I've tried to do more, truthfully, I think when I came out of college, like, I had this, not that this podcast is about me, so I see what you're doing, trying to flip the question, but I made a hard, left turn. I was like partying a lot out of college, and for the first like 9 months, and, starting my sales career and taking it seriously, but also maybe not very seriously. And when I moved from Boston to San Francisco, I made like a hard left turn, and I left a lot of those, friends kind of like in the rear view. I started reading a ton. I started, getting into like Tony Robbins type stuff and listening to podcasts, and started this podcast and doing all this stuff that was like really career focused, and then almost like kind of like left a lot of like the friendship and enjoyment of life like behind. And so what I've tried to do in the last year or two is like bring that a little bit back, and like you're saying, spend some time like playing sports. Like I played tennis last night with some friends, and
Nice.
just trying to like have that balance where it's not always work, and you can kind of not feel guilty when you're gonna have a night where you're gonna have a date night, or you're gonna hang with friends or watch the game or whatever, and like just understand that doesn't make you like a failure. It sounds weird to say, but that is how I felt for years.
That's an important point. Yeah, that's an important point. Understand that it's not a failure. That's really the psychology of it. I think is most of the work of like understanding, thinking about what you do in terms of ROI. Like maybe going out to play tennis or having dinner with your fiance. I think you're engaged, right? Congrats, by the way. So you're going out for dinner with your fiance, like that's ROI on the value that you bring to the business, even if you're not working. So I think that self-assessing the psychology of it and telling yourself that, hey, you're doing this to take care of you, because the better your energy is, the better your mood is, it's going to impact the value that you bring on the business. Also, as a startup founder, I mean, you have to be able to learn to work with failure. I mean, it's similar to sales. You have to understand that like failure sometimes is your default status and it's okay. Yeah. And frame it as like, as long as you're learning and you're growing, because I mean, startups, 95% of startups fail. So as a startup founder, like your default status is failure, and failure might not be negative, but if you succeed, that's great. But just framing it as like the psychology of it and turning it around and thinking about ROI and growth in terms of your business and yourself, I think it's going to make a big impact on your output and your value and also your mental health.
Yeah, like, I mean, when you think about, I love reading and listening to podcasts of people that are successful in different fields, outside of just sales or even outside of business. And most of the time people's like main successes come in their 30s or 40s or sometimes even 50s. And so to take the pressure off of like, hey, you don't need to peak at 28, like you're on like you're learning, you're growing. And I have this sticky note to myself that I wrote last quarter that says 30 years, not 30 days. And that is like, I'm looking at it right now, and it's just like, it doesn't matter if like, the customer pushes you off or, you fuck up on this one call, like, that kind of sucks for a moment, but in the long run, there's like, if you're building the skill set and, you're building the connections and you're growing and you're getting 1% better every day, then, 30 years from now, you're going to be like so set. And even, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So just trying to focus on those things that stack versus like the little, things that negatives that might happen in a day or in a week.
Yeah, and I think you can apply that well to sales and startups. I saw a tweet by David Cancel, the CEO of Drift, and he said like the market right now, like your differentiation doesn't come from the product anymore. It comes from the experience and the brand. And I think that applies to product startups, but also to sales reps. Like your differentiation will not necessarily come with your one email or the deal that you just closed. It's going to come from the experience that you offer, whether it's through that sales pipeline or through the relationships that you build. And I think having that mentality of going for 30 years rather than 30 days, it's going to switch from like immediate pain relief or immediate like gratification towards working on something more sustainable long-term and really building those relationships. So I think that applies to even like the work that we do every single day.
Yeah, man, I think it's just consistency and being able to ride it out. Like no matter what you're doing, if you're starting a company, if you're a sales rep, if you're trying to get better at, basketball, whatever it is, like if you just keep plugging away, like it might take some time, but you're going to get there. Like
you're going to get there for sure.
Every discipline, right? If you just keep working hard and you have the patience to look at a longer time horizon, it might not happen as soon as you want, but it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's your motivational part of the podcast.
There you go. The psychology part of that podcast.
So the reason that we got introduced to a mutual friend, Zach, and I think you met him doing, kind of like hacking your way into learning about product-led growth companies, which is kind of like the sexy, new wave, I feel like, in SaaS and in startups. And so I'd love for you to talk about like what some of your learnings are about product-led growth and maybe for people that are interested in those types of companies, whether it's working at them or investing in them or just learning more about the market. I'd love to hear what you learned about that experience.
Yeah, and I mean, it all started from a blog that I was writing that turned into an ebook. Like I was writing about product-led sales and that shift that sales is going through right now of like selling and then delivering value to switching from delivering value and then selling. So it started off on a blog, and then it was so interesting. I kept writing, and turned into an ebook. And what I did was I just reached out to really cool product-led companies like Zoom, like Hugo, like Unstack, like Miro, the guys at OpenView, to just learn more about the space and what they're doing. So got conversations with like VP sales at Pitch, head of growth at Loom, and really interesting people. And through that process, like I was just trying to learn myself, because I think it's a space that is interesting and it's making the sales motion change a little, or some say a lot. So it was just through that process. Like I had conversations with those. I wasn't trying to sell anything. I was just trying to write an ebook where it showed like the best practices that product-led companies do in terms of their outreach sequences, in terms of prioritizing leads, in terms of the sales process, the demos, the follow-up, sales enablement, etc. So it was through that process that I met with Zach, that's the VP sales and marketing at Unstack. And yeah, I learned a ton. I think that, I mean, Blake from OpenView writes a lot about that, but I think for product-led companies, it's all about like sales is not needed anymore. Like it's not like you're product-led, you don't need sales. In fact, like Slack hires 50% more sales reps every year. Atlassian is hiring a shit ton of sales reps. Like the best product-led companies, if you look at the companies that are certain size, they're hiring sales like crazy. So it's the misconception that product-led equals no sales is completely wrong. So I think that's what I was interested about, and understanding like how that changed your sales funnel, how that changed your sales dynamics, and the strategies that you use, and really focusing on delivering value and then engaging sales reps on the right leads at the right time. And I think that's a space where there needs to be more tools, and we're building product blind spots for sales into our Bliinx assistant right now. But there's a ton of learnings in that ebook, like how Loom prioritizes product qualified leads, for example, or how Hugo builds their outreach sequence for free users and try to convert them into paid. So yeah, that was through that process that I met with Zach and other leaders in the product space.
Because that's a completely different sales cycle than, say where I'm at with Gong, right? Where it's outbound, right? And you're going and you're hunting and you're trying to find the right people at the right time. And that's your main problem. Whereas if you're at Slack, for example, you've got people coming in for free, right? Trying the product out. And it's partially that the product needs to show up and, provide enough value and get sticky, but then, you need to kind of prioritize and work your sales cycle off of that. So it does feel like as a salesperson, it's a completely different motion, at least in the beginning, in terms of how you're building relationships and adding value to people.
Yeah, and I think you can do both. Like there's a lot of companies that are doing both, but you said it right. Were you introduced to Slack via an email? No, you weren't. Like you were invited by a coworker, or you tried the tool first, but Slack is still hiring 50% more sales reps every year. So I think there's a shift in mentality and in sales funnels, and companies can be sales led, or can be product led, or can be both. But I think it's just an interesting way to think about like who you engage, when, with what content, switching to more of a consultancy style sales, having CS reps be more involved in the sales process. So I think that's what I tried showing in the ebooks, the tactics that people use. And like maybe your first touch points are automated for your free users, but then a human walks into the process. And it's the importance of when you reach out to user. It's like you have to be extremely, what I found with those companies, they're extremely contextual. Like if you use Hugo on a Saturday, someone from the CS team or the founder will send you an email saying, hey, like I can relate, working hard, working long hours. So it's extremely contextual. The timing is right. And they focus also on the best leads, because if you're Loom and you bring in 10,000 leads a month, like you want to focus on the right ones. So I think there's different dynamics, but you can still be sales led, product led, or both. I mean, there's other terms now like community led or everything led. words nowadays. Yeah.
There's always a new buzzword, and I love that Saturday example of like a cadence. And I'd say, like, if I were to think just as a salesperson, if I were to go back through like an interview process, I think it'd be a good question to ask, if it's product led, like learning about, what's the percentage of, conversion from free user to paid. And if it's not, if they do any sort of trial in the sales process or pilot, like what's your conversion there? Because like to sell a product that someone tries and as soon as they get it in their hands, it's almost like game over, right? Like we need this, is so different than anything else. And like that's, there's situations at Gong where, people, pilot it maybe with a small team or something like that and then expand. And it's the first time I've sold in that motion before. And it's such a breath of fresh air as a salesperson that, you get it in their hands and then it's like, oh, it's game over. It kind of reminds me when I was selling Cutco knives and you're in someone's kitchen and you're chopping up veggies. And then all of a sudden you're like, why don't you take the knife? And once they do that, it's like, wow, this thing's amazing. And then, it's an automatic sale. So I think that's just kind of a random footnote for people when you're thinking about your next company as well.
Yeah, but I think also like sales are crucial. They're still crucial because the barriers to entry in terms of products is getting lower and lower. So a feature that was hard to code a couple of years ago, now you can code with in seconds or no code, and people expect it. So the differentiation, and goes back to the Drift CEO's tweet, like it's all about the experience that you offer. Like what's gonna make a client stay with Gong? Well, your marketing is killer, and the experience that your sales rep and your CS reps provide is amazing, and that's gonna make a huge difference, like on par with another company that has a similar product. So I think sales reps are still crucial. CS reps are crucial in that process to expand. And what I try to showcasing in the ebook, it's all about for product-led companies, it's all about your growth loop, your value loop, like the action, the trigger, the action, the reward, and the investment. And like people can go through that loop on their own by signing up for a free product, but there's probably ways for sales to increase that loop or to unblock users through that loop and make sure that they're more successful in your product. So it's just a different way to think about it. But I think people people want value before they give their credit card more and more.
Yeah, totally. Last kind of topic for you. We're big learners on this podcast. I'm curious, like whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, people you follow on LinkedIn or otherwise, that have been impactful for you so far in your career. And this could be sales or entrepreneurship or mindset, or any topic is fair game, but just curious what has made an impact on you.
Yeah, I mean, a couple books that have made a big impact. The Mom Test has been huge in terms of doing discovery and understanding the pain point of customers. Like for the first year of Bliinx, I realized that I was going after false positives, and I restarted the whole customer discovery process right after reading the Mom Test. So that's been extremely useful. I think Spin Selling is a classic. Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. I think for founders out there, or people working on the product, or even sales, like being able to understand your product's positioning and what your potential customers are comparing your offering to. And sometimes it's not other like flashy tech companies. It might be the status quo, or it might be an intern. So that book was extremely useful. Another one just for founders, and the title is cheesy as hell, but it's really great. And Nathan Latka also suggested that book. It's How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis. It's a British entrepreneur that just goes like extremely transparent about what it takes to just succeed in life, and as a founder, and as someone in a like customer facing role in a way. And it's been honestly one of the most enjoyable books, but also the greatest learnings. But like you have to go past the title, because the title is like super cheesy. You don't read that in a coffee, just in public. You keep that to yourself at home with that title. And last thing, I think just the 80-20 rule in sales has helped me a lot, right? It's like you talk for 20% and you let the other person talk for 80, and you'll be surprised how just following that will help in terms of coming across as more charismatic, building that rapport quickly, but also learning way quicker what you're trying to learn, whether it's your prospect or your customer. I think that's not a book in itself, but that helped me a lot.
Totally. I'll have to check that one out. And you're not trying to read How to Get Rich like on a plane or something. But
no.
have you read this is somewhat related to what we were talking about earlier, but have you read Shoe Dog?
I have, yeah. I have.
I love that book for so many reasons, but one similar to what we were talking about. For folks that don't know, it's the story of Phil Knight and how he created Nike. And like 95% of the book is from like 1977 to like 1990 or something, or the first like 10 to 15 years where there was so much pain and struggle and heartache
and hustling and like being weeks away from not having money in the bank. Yeah.
And then they IPO, and then there's like 5 pages after that to like cover the next 20 years where they have like massive success. And I love the way that he wrote that book, where it really does, it is such an emphasis on the grind versus just like, having Michael Jordan, be like your main sponsor and all that stuff. So
that's such a good point. There's a lot of business books that are like the 5 pages are the grind of the start, and then you're at chapter 1 and it's like, okay, we have 100 million in revenue, or like we have $1 million in revenue. It's like, I want to know about the start, because that's really the hard part. Like startup founders talked about the year of hell, like the first one of the first couple of years of your startup is going to be year of hell, but like no one talks about that like dark side of entrepreneurship and the hustle. And I think that book is a good example of like when the Japanese investment bank like bailed them out because they didn't have any money. He talks openly about that. And I think not enough people are talking about how hard it is at the start. I try to do that a little in some blogs that I write. Like I did a blog like, here are our fuck ups for 2020 and like what we learned from them. But I think there needs to be more on that, of like, it's not all like fundraising news and articles and like big acquisition news. There's also like hustle that has a lot of learning in it that people don't talk about. Totally,
man. Totally. Well, Fred, I appreciate your time, your hustle, your energy, coming on the show.
Thanks, man.
Where's the best place for folks to learn, connect with you and learn more about Bliinx?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really active on LinkedIn, so they can connect with me, Fred Melanson on LinkedIn. To learn about Bliinx, Bliinx.com, Bliinx.com. So anyone in a sales position that's trying to get more replies and build more meaningful relationships without using automated sequences and really be more efficient with their touch points. We're in beta in Gmail right now, so we only have like invite only 100 spots. I think there's a few left, so if people sign up or send me a message, I can unlock them for them. And we're preparing for a more public launch in September. So check us out, Bliinx.com.
Awesome. Appreciate your time, Fred.
Appreciate you having me, man. It was a blast. Thanks for agreeing to speak.
Absolutely. What's up, everybody? Thanks for checking out that podcast. Happy July to you. Would love if you took 22 seconds and hit subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, your favorite podcast player. And be sure to check out some of my content on LinkedIn. I'm Tom Alemo, and on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Tommy Tahoe. Have a great day. Make it legendary. Peace.